Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button, so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from, how many sons and daughters you have. Thanks. You think you can just walk back in here and act like this is yours? My voice cracked as I screamed across the living room, my fingers trembling, still wrapped around the handle of my walker. The smell of lemon polish still lingered in the air, my lemon polish. I used to clean every corner of this house on Sundays. Every picture frame, every edge of the floorboards, even the old grandfather clock I bought with my husband before he passed. And now they were acting like I was the intruder? You weren't supposed to come back. Carla snapped, heels clicking across my wooden floor like it belonged to her now. You're supposed to be in rehab. We thought you'd need at least another 3 weeks. Her voice was cold. Practiced. No tears. No worry. Not even the kind of fake sympathy you'd expect from someone who called you grandma all her life. And you were supposed to be my granddaughter, I said, trying to steady my breath, but the rage was climbing fast. My hospital bracelet was still on my wrist. My stitches still fresh beneath the fabric of my coat. Instead, you sold my house while I was in a hospital bed? Carla didn't even flinch. Her boyfriend, or whatever he was, sat on my couch, legs stretched, beer in hand, like it was some kind of frat house now. Technically, he said smugly, your name wasn't the only one on the deed. Remember that paperwork you signed before your surgery? Gave Carla power of attorney? That's when my knees gave. Not from weakness. Not from the long weeks recovering in that cold hospital room. No. It was betrayal. Deep, twisted betrayal that felt like it was eating through my bones. Carla rushed forward, not to help me up, but to snatch the folder from my lap before it hit the ground. You don't understand, Grandma, she said, finally crouching beside me. This house, it was wasted on you. 3 bedrooms, a giant backyard, and you were just sitting in here with cats and old memories. We needed this. We needed a fresh start. You needed this? I snapped, forcing myself upright, even though the stitches screamed under my skin. You needed to throw out 40 years of my life like it was nothing? Your grandfather built this porch with his bare hands. We planted that magnolia tree together. And you sold it for what? A quick flip and a boyfriend who can't even look me in the eye. He scoffed and muttered, should have written a will if it meant so much to you. And that was it. The last straw. I reached into my purse and pulled out the only thing I had left, a tattered photo. Carla, at 5 years old, sitting on this very porch with chocolate ice cream dripping down her chin. Back when she used to call me her hero. Back when she used to cry if I didn't tuck her in. I didn't raise you for this, I said, softer now, not out of peace, but pain. I sacrificed so much so you could go to college, follow your dreams, live better than I did. And this is what you do when I get sick. You sneak behind my back and steal my home? Carla rolled her eyes, standing up and adjusting her jacket like this was some minor inconvenience. It's not stealing if the paperwork's legal. I took care of everything. It's done. The house is sold. New owners take over next month. You should really be in assisted living anyway. I froze. Assisted living? After everything I did for you, you're putting me in a home? My voice cracked again, this time not from anger, but pure devastation. You sold my house, and threw me away like garbage? She didn't answer. And maybe that silence hurt more than the lies. My name is Linda Patterson. I'm 74 years old. And everything you just heard, every cold word, every betrayal, was real. I thought my family loved me. I thought the sacrifices I made, the late nights, the scrubbing floors, the second jobs, the tuition checks, meant something. But all it took was one illness, one surgery, for them to show their true colors. While I lay in a hospital bed recovering from a fall that almost ended me, my own granddaughter, the little girl I raised like my own, sold my house behind my back. And the worst part? I gave her the power to do it. I signed over legal rights, trusting that she'd keep things safe until I recovered. But I was wrong. So wrong. Back to present. You've got 30 days to move out, Carla said flatly. I already talked to the buyers. They're being generous. I didn't even respond. I couldn't. The walls around me, the ones I painted every spring, the floors I mopped for decades, the porch where I danced barefoot in the rain with my late husband, it was all disappearing. Erased like I never existed. I turned around, each step slower than the last, walker clicking over wood that was no longer mine. But as I stood at the front door, my front door, I looked back one more time. You may think you've won, I whispered. But this house remembers me. These walls remember me. And one day, Carla, so will you. Because some betrayals don't break you. They rebuild you. They didn't always treat me like a burden. There was a time when Carla couldn't fall asleep without my voice singing her lullabies. When she used to climb into my lap just to hear another story from my childhood. She used to call me her safe place. It started slowly, like most heartbreaks do. Little signs, subtle changes. I should have seen it coming, but when you love someone with your whole heart, you don't notice when that same heart starts cracking under the weight of disappointment. I remember her first day of college. I was the one who packed her bags. I rolled every pair of socks and wrote her a handwritten note to hide in her suitcase. It said, "Make me proud, baby girl. I believe in you more than anyone ever will." She cried when she read it. She hugged me so tight that day, I thought she'd never let go. Back then, it was just her and me. Her parents, they weren't around much. My daughter, Carla's mother, left when she was barely in middle school. Couldn't handle the pressure of being a mom. So, I stepped in. I took over. I didn't complain. I didn't hesitate. I just loved her. Every night. Every meal. Every scraped knee. Every missed prom. Every loud silence. And when she finally made it into university, I emptied half my savings, the money your grandpa and I had planned to use for a cruise we never got to take, and handed it to her with a smile. "This is for your future," I said. "Not mine." And it felt good. Back then. Until her calls got less frequent. Until the visits stopped. Until birthdays were just texts, and even those came late. At first, I made excuses for her. She's busy. She's growing. She's trying to find herself. But then came the first time she brought him around, the boyfriend with the slick hair, smug grin, and fast-talking charm. "Grandma, this is Trey. He's in real estate." Even then, I remember a chill running down my spine. Something in his eyes didn't sit right. He didn't call me Mrs. Patterson or ma'am. Just a nod and a cocky "what's up?" Still. I smiled. I offered him pie. Because that's what you do when you love someone's bad decision. But love, when it's blind, doesn't just hurt. It hollows. Soon, Carla started asking for more. "Could I borrow just a little more money? Do you really need all that space in the house? Trey said we should fix the garage, it's going to raise the property value." One night, I caught them whispering in the kitchen. Doors half closed. His voice low but sharp. Hers nervous, like she didn't want me to hear. I didn't say anything then. Maybe I should have. Maybe if I'd spoken up, drawn a line, none of this would have happened. But I stayed quiet. I thought love meant trusting someone, even when it felt wrong. I thought she's my granddaughter, she'd never hurt me. I kept the faith, until the morning I fell in the backyard. The doctor said my hip had been weak for years, but no one noticed. Because I never told anyone how often I felt dizzy. I didn't want to be a burden. So when I hit the ground that day, I thought maybe that was it. But I remember. Even lying in the ambulance, in the cold, I kept asking, "Can someone call Carla? Tell her not to worry. I'm fine." Just tell her to feed the cat. I didn't know she wouldn't even answer the hospital calls for 2 whole days. When she did show up, she had flowers. Cheap ones. And a piece of paper. "Grandma," she said, smiling a little too wide. "The doctors say you're going to need rest. Real rest. No worrying about bills or property stuff. So I brought this, a power of attorney form. Just until you're up and walking again." I signed it. Because I trusted her. Because I was tired. Because I was in pain and scared and alone. Because when you're lying in a hospital bed, the idea that someone, anyone, might be looking out for you is a kind of comfort you cling to like a lifeline. I didn't know she'd use it to strip everything from me. They didn't waste time. Within 2 weeks, she had the house listed. Furniture moved. My name erased from the utilities. I wasn't just unwanted. I was invisible. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't happen all at once. It starts in the silence. In the little lies. In the moments you forgive things you shouldn't. I loved her like a daughter. She sold my house like I was a stranger. But what she didn't know was that everything she thought she buried, every photo, every memory, every receipt and letter, I had backups. And even though I was broken, I wasn't finished. Because love makes you vulnerable. But betrayal gives you purpose. The hospital bed was cold, but not as cold as the silence that came after I found out what they'd done. I remember the nurse walking in, cheerful as always, saying, "Oh, good news, Mrs. Patterson. Your granddaughter said she took care of everything. She even sold your house, now you don't have to worry about all those responsibilities." My whole body went numb. She said it like it was a gift. Like I should be grateful. Like they hadn't just ripped out everything I'd built with my own hands. I didn't even cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring out that grimy window, thinking, they think I'm finished. They thought I was just some old woman with bad bones and no fight left in her. But they forgot who I used to be. They forgot the woman who raised 2 kids through a recession. The woman who ran a bakery from her kitchen when her husband died too soon. The woman who paid off a mortgage on 1 salary and a pocket full of food stamps. They forgot I've seen harder days than this. And still stood tall. So I stopped asking the nurses to call her. I stopped hoping she'd walk through that door with tears and apologies. I stopped waiting for people who already proved they'd leave me behind. Instead, I started writing. I asked the nurse for a notebook and pen, told her it was for therapy. What it was strategy. Every bill I ever paid. Every document. Every check I gave her for college help or down payment support. Every time I added her name to anything, I remembered it all. And I wrote it all down. Because if she was going to erase me on paper, then I was going to rewrite myself back in. The day I got out of that hospital, no one picked me up. No balloons. No hugs. No "we missed you." Just a taxi driver outside with my name scribbled on cardboard and a "they prepaid, get in." They had arranged for me to be sent to a small senior rental unit. 12 feet by 10. 1 chair. No kitchen. No dignity. They hadn't even sent the cat. I sat down on that hard, plastic bed, my purse clutched tight to my side, and I made a decision. This is not where my story ends. The next morning, I took the bus to the city records office. A young man at the front desk tried to wave me away. "Ma'am, appointments are online only." I leaned in, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "Son, I'm not here to scroll. I'm here to fight. And I've been doing that since before you were born. Now get your manager." 10 minutes later, I was sitting in front of a woman named Denise. She listened. She nodded. She asked for paperwork. And when I handed her that notebook, my months of scribbled dates, accounts, receipts, even screenshots I'd asked the nurses to help me print, her eyes widened. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, voice low, "you might have a case." I looked at her and said, I don't want revenge. I want my life back. A week passed. Then two. Then one morning, I got a knock on the door of my senior unit. A man in a blazer and loafers stood holding an envelope. Are you Mrs. Jeanette Patterson? Yes. You've been summoned. Probate hearing. There's a dispute over your property's transfer. Someone raised a red flag. Someone. I knew who that someone was. Me. The court date came quicker than expected. Carla was there. Trey too. Wearing that same smug smile, holding her hand like he'd already won. She didn't even look me in the eye at first. Just sat there like I was an inconvenience. Like I was the intruder in her story. The judge asked me to speak. I didn't bring a lawyer. I didn't need one. I stood with my cane in one hand and that notebook in the other. And I told them the truth. From the beginning. How I'd raised her. How I'd signed those papers under duress. How the power of attorney was supposed to be temporary, not a weapon. How I hadn't even known they listed the house until it was already gone. How I had never consented to being erased. The judge asked Carla to respond. She looked nervous for the first time. Her voice cracked when she said, we were just trying to help her downsize. She's old. She can't live alone. We didn't want her to be stressed. I stepped forward. I didn't ask for help. I asked for love. And you don't sell someone's home behind their back and call it love. The judge looked at her. Then at Trey. Then at the stack of evidence I had. And what she said next felt like the first breath I'd taken in months. This transfer was predatory. It's void. You can break a woman's bones. But don't you dare underestimate her mind. They thought my age made me easy to silence. But I had truth on my side, and truth, my dear, always echoes louder than greed. They sold my house while I was on a hospital bed. But they didn't know. I was only resting. I walked back into that house with my head held high. The same house they tried to erase me from. The same living room where I'd read bedtime stories to a little girl who once called me hero. Now, it smelled like cheap air freshener and entitlement. Carla was there. Standing in the middle of my living room like she still owned it. Wearing some overpriced outfit she'd probably bought with my savings. You can't just come in here, she shouted, stepping forward like she could scare me. I didn't flinch. You're right, I said, walking past her. I can't just come in. That's why I brought this. I held up the court order. Effective immediately, this property, and everything inside it, is restored to my ownership. You have 48 hours to vacate. Trey stepped into the hallway, clearly not ready for this fight. Jeanette, let's not get emotional here. Oh, don't worry, I snapped. My emotions packed and left the same day you two listed my house behind my back. I watched Carla's face twist, a mix of shock, rage, and something deeper. Fear. Because for the first time in her life, she had no control over me. I walked into my kitchen. The table was gone. Replaced by some tacky glass dining set. Photos were stripped from the walls. My memories, my moments, erased. They'd tried to make my home theirs. But walls remember. Floors remember. And so do I. I opened the cabinet and found the jar, the same one I'd kept spare keys in for 30 years. Still there. Still mine. I built this house brick by brick, I said, turning around. And you tried to flip it like a pawnshop sofa. I was going to give you some of the money, Carla stammered. Some of the money? I laughed, a bitter, tired laugh. You mean after you paid off your car? After you booked that trip to Bali? After you paid his student loans? Trey looked down, ashamed. Maybe for the first time. Maybe not enough. You used me, I said. And I forgave that the first time. The second time. But selling my soul's last shelter? I leaned in, calm and clear. That was your last strike. They left that night. Took their things. Slammed my door like children being grounded. But they couldn't slam away what they'd done. I spent the next day walking from room to room, trying to remember what used to be there. Where the couch sat. The smell of Sunday pies. The creak in the hallway that always warned me someone was sneaking in late. This house, it had been gutted. But it still had its bones. Just like me. I could have moved on quietly. I could have sat in my chair and let time heal me. But I'm not made like that. So I turned my pain into a plan. I started calling around. Churches. Legal aid. News stations. Anyone who'd listen. And one day, a young woman with a camera showed up at my door. She said, "I saw your story online. Do you mind if I record a short video? Just something to help other seniors." I looked at her and said, "Baby, you can record the whole war." That video went viral in 2 days. Grandma fights back after family sells her home behind her back. Elder betrayed, but she outsmarts them all. Thousands of comments. People crying. Cheering. Sharing their own stories. Even strangers showed up to help restore my house. One brought back the exact kitchen table model I used to have. I didn't ask for revenge. I asked for restoration. And this? This was more than I ever imagined. 1 week later, Carla came back. Not to apologize. But to ask for help. She stood on my porch, eyes red, makeup smeared. "We lost the apartment we moved into," she said. "Trey can't find work. And I messed up. I know I did. But please. Just for a few nights. I don't have anywhere else to go." I stared at her, quiet. The wind whistled through the porch rails. Then I asked, "Did you think of me when I was in that hospital bed?" Her lips parted, but no words came. "Did you think of where I would go when you handed my keys to a realtor?" She swallowed hard. "You told everyone I was too old to understand. But I understood perfectly. You loved what I could give. Not who I was. I raised you to be better than this." And for a moment, I thought I saw the girl I once knew. But it wasn't enough. "I wish you healing," I said. "But not in this house." And I closed the door. Kindness is a choice. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. They thought my age made me forgettable, disposable. But I remembered everything. They sold my house while I was on a hospital bed. But I stood up, and I took it back. It's funny how silence sounds different when you've earned it. The creaks of the floor, the ticking clock on the wall, they don't haunt me anymore. They comfort me now. Because they remind me, I'm still standing. I sit in my favorite chair, not the old one they threw out, but the new one. A gift from a woman I've never met in person, who wrote, "My own kids forgot about me too. You reminded me I'm not invisible." I read that letter out loud sometimes. Just to remind myself that pain has purpose, when you give it one. You know, I used to think the worst thing in life was being betrayed by your own blood. But it's not. The worst thing is realizing you raised the people who betrayed you. I had to sit with that. Cry with that. And then, forgive myself for not seeing it sooner. Because that's what healing really looks like. Not revenge. Not getting even. But choosing to build again, brick by brick, even after everything's been ripped from your hands. I turned this house into something new. Not just a home. A haven. For women like me, seniors who were tricked, abandoned, pushed aside. They come here now. For tea. For shelter. For stories that don't start with once upon a time but with, "I never thought I'd survive that." One woman, her son forged her name and drained her retirement account. Another? Her daughter left her in a shelter so she could remodel her kitchen. We sit here, under this roof they tried to take from me. And we laugh through the pain. We outlive the betrayal. And no, I didn't press charges. Not because they didn't deserve it. But because I deserved peace. Trey sent me a letter last month. No return address. Just 4 words. You didn't deserve that. That's the closest thing to sorry I'll probably ever get. Carla? Last I heard, she was living with a friend, still jumping job to job, blaming everyone but herself. And me? I'm still here. Still dancing in the kitchen when no one's watching. Still humming my favorite gospel when the sun hits just right. Still living in the house they tried to erase me from. You know, people think age makes you soft. But let me tell you something. Age doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. And sometimes, wisdom means knowing when to fight. And when to rise. They sold my house. But I rebuilt a legacy. 1 cup of tea, 1 story, 1 strong woman at a time. So if you're watching this right now, if you've been betrayed, abandoned, pushed out like yesterday's news, don't give them the last word. You write the comeback.